Food delivery drivers. What is the strangest delivery instructions request you actually did for the customer? I'm not a delivery driver, but the story of my once best friend deserves preservation. Years ago, I was working 2 full-time jobs and constantly exhausted. Most days, the only good part of my day was when I was able to get my Domino's pizza delivered. During my hour-and-a-half break between jobs about once a week, I quickly developed a friendship with one of the drivers. He was a very kind soul. He had moved here recently from South Korea. He had been a medical doctor but realized that he didn't want that same life for his children for whatever reason, so they came to the States. He gave up so much to be in America with his children, including his medical career, and ended up being a delivery driver because he spoke pretty solid English but with a very heavy accent. I always tipped him as much as I could because I cared so much for him and everything he did. He was really my best friend, and I started ordering on days he worked so I could spend time with him. After a few months, he came to my door, very jittery, told me he'd been accepted into the pharmacy program at the local med school, and they're giving him a speech therapist to help him. I was so overjoyed because he had worked so hard for this. That weekend at one of my jobs, I decided to surprise him. I ordered a pizza, and all my coworkers had pitched in a lot of money for a tip to celebrate. I was so excited to give him all of this. 20 minutes passed, 40, an hour, and he still hadn't come in. Eventually, someone else did. I asked where my friend was, and he just said he was busy. I was disappointed, but understanding. The next day, I called to ask if my friend was in, and the woman on the phone said he had been in a car crash and was no longer working there. And that's it. I don't know what happened. I don't even know if he's alive. I miss my Domino's delivery driver so much, and I really hope he's okay. Okay, so honestly, I was expecting a punchline about a wrong order or forgetting the dipping sauce or him just forgetting the guy and living his life up in medical school, but this took a sharp turn faster than that delivery car probably ever did. Story 2. Not me, a friend told me about this classic delivery. Delivers 3 pizzas to a lady. She answers the door and asks if he can do her a favor for a few extra bucks. He's hesitant at first, older lady and not a cougar. He says yes. She asks him to change a light bulb she can't reach. Oh, okay, no problem. Happy to help this lady who probably lives alone. She leads him into the dining room, living room, and there are 5 to 6 people in there, all watching TV. Most of them fully grown adults, a couple teenagers. All of them are more than capable of changing the light from the ceiling fan in the middle of the room. No one says anything or looks at my friend. She hands him the light bulb and he changes one of the bulbs. All the while, this group of people continues to not acknowledge any of this is happening. It's not a raunchy story, but it is pretty funny to think about it. Also, it's true, unlike 95% of what's going to be posted here. I don't know, let's go ahead and test that theory out. We got a couple more stories to go. Here's story 3. Largest order I ever had was from a fairly expensive restaurant, around $30 for an entree. 11 bags, and I had to make 3 trips for it all. I got the address, and it was across town, literally an hour's drive due to traffic. It was during rush hour. But since I get paid by the mile and this was only going to be like $10, I thought whatever and accepted the job. I get there and there were detailed instructions. This was for a celebration of the sale of X's, the customer's startup company. I was to bring the food inside and place it in catering dishes, the big metal ones with sterno heaters underneath, and let the host know when all the food was in the containers. They even had labels for where everything went and placemats with the guests' names on them. The instructions also included what everyone ordered. Honestly, I expected a big tip because this was way out of what I've ever experienced doing Uber Eats. After apparently becoming a part-time caterer, I put all the food in the designated spots. I went out back to where these newly rich folks were celebrating, popping bottles of champagne and lighting cigars. I asked for X, the host, and let them know that everything was all set up. Her response? Okay. Then she turned around and went back to the party. Lol, not only did I not get a tip, I didn't even get a thank you. See, this one's already believable. Story 4. Figured I'd share a better story because this one seems to be angering people. My first delivery for the day, it was cold and raining. I have a keyless ignition car and typically leave my keys on a carabiner on my belt loop. Since it was raining and cold, I left my car running with the heater on. I would just hit the lock button on the door and hop out, leaving my car running and locked, which isn't a problem as long as the keys are on my waist. I go to deliver my first order of the day and the guy tips me $10. I'm super happy as it's the biggest tip I've had in a while and go back to my car. I reach for my keys on my belt and they aren't there. I'd left them in the center console with the car running, lol. I call my wife to get my spare key and she wakes up my neighbor to come drop it off. Turns out he's not home for another 45 minutes, so I have to wait. Well, the customer is wondering what I was doing standing out in the rain and comes out. Turns out he works for AAA and has my car door open within 5 minutes with 0 damage. I tried to give the guy the $10 back, but he refused to take it. Dude was super freaking awesome. Story 5. I used to deliver for this Japanese restaurant when I was in college, and one day I got a request to pick up a 30 rack of PBR for an extra $10. They already had a pretty big order, close to $100, and it would work well for me because I could pick it up at this gas station that sold beer and fill my tank at the same time. After a bit of debate about whether or not it was worth it, I decided, what the heck? If they'd try not to pay me, I could just keep the beer. I was going to buy more beer at some point soon anyway. I got to the place, and it's a few bros who apparently had been drinking all day, and were all too intoxicated to drive but wanted more beer. So they took a shot asking me before having to walk somewhere. Ended up getting like $30 total, which was one of the best tips I ever got as a driver. Story 6. When I was working at a pizza place years ago, we had a guy who lived in one of the senior citizen facilities ask us to call him before we left the store with his order. We figured it was so he would know we were on his way and could come down to the lobby and not have to wait. In all truth, he asked if the driver would stop at the ABC store on his way, pick up a fifth of scotch and 2 Swisher sweet cigars, then swing by another senior facility that was on the way to pick up his quote-unquote lady friend. The driver did it, and he got an extra $50. Story 7. A guy called late at night wanting a disturbing type of meat pizza. Definitely was not a prank. The chick on the phone got really freaked out by him, so the manager got on, sold him a meat lover's pizza, and made me frickin' deliver it. I'm like, are you kidding me? You're gonna make me deliver a pizza to someone who ordered questionable meat? This chick is the dumbest manager I've ever had. She probably thought she was like a slick salesman selling him a frickin' meat lovers. I say, best case scenario, this guy is screwing around and doesn't want the pizza. Worst case, he's going to terminate me. So I go to deliver this pizza to an apartment building on the outskirts of town. When the dude opens the door, a horrible smell immediately hits me. He looks like he hasn't been outside in a while, just stares at me and then goes, "You didn't mess with my pizza, did you?" "No, sir." Gave him the total. "There'd better not be a mess in this." "I would never do something like that, sir." Get back to the store. Manager, he called back and said, "You messed with his pizza. He wants to return it. You have to go back." I refused to go back. They sent someone else. They tried to act like I was overreacting. The other delivery guy even came back and said, "He seemed all right." BS. It's like, how many customers have you had order a disturbing meat and then immediately claim it has mess on it and return it? Honestly, some of the dumbest people I'd ever known. Job could have been really chill if it weren't for the stupid freaking manager and the trash she hired. This wasn't some kid screwing around. It was a middle-aged man who looked like he definitely had some issues. I wanted the manager to report it to the police, continued acting like I was overreacting. Story 8. Very popular local pizza place in the city I went to college. Literally, every delivery driver sold grass. I don't smoke personally, but I can only imagine that pizza delivery and buyers are a pretty large shared space on the Venn diagram of life. Apparently, the owner had a hand in it or something. I was in several classes with one of the guys who delivered for them, and he sold a boggling amount of grass. Always carried and was always spiked. He made a ton of money. He used to joke he'd never quit because a real job wouldn't pay as well. Story 9. Worked at a now defunct cafe/healthy-ish farm to table spot in Williamsburg, BK. Up the street in Greenpoint, there is an abundance of movie, television, and photography studios who made up the majority of our business. My favorite story was when a studio exec decided to buy his staff a large, around $500 meal and got the address right but the studio number wrong. I showed up to the wrong studio, gave them the food, and left. I returned to my restaurant to find that I had delivered the equivalent of 5 to 10% of our daily sales to the wrong people, and we had to rapidly remake the order and bring it back out. When I got back to the studio, the person who had wrongly accepted the first order locked eyes with me and then ran away super awkwardly like a dog that had just chewed up his owner's sneakers. Story 10. Obligatory, not a delivery driver, but I took a lot of strange requests during my time taking calls. The most prevalent one is from a lady who called in while she was spiked as heck. She was all giggling and asked for pizza with half olives and half everything on it. Being me, I started adding every single topping we had, eventually turning a $12 pizza into a $32 mess. When I read back the order, my manager didn't even tap my shoulder to tell me she wanted to talk. She just grabbed the phone and said, "We can't fit this in the oven." She just finishes up their order and gives them our deluxe pizza. Half an hour passes, and who comes out, stumbling in, but a very, very intoxicated woman. She wanders around our storefront for like 5 minutes before we give her the order, at which point she starts walking towards the door, singing to her food. I couldn't make out what she was saying, but clearly she was into it. Story 11. My buddy and I put a sign on my front door when I was 12 that said, "Please use the back door," and a sign on the back door that said, "Please use the front door." One time, So admittedly, we were little schmucks. However, the driver came to the front door, walked to the back door, then walked to the front door again, then walked to the back door, and finally knocked. We answered and bought the pizza, and he didn't say a word about the signs. Underwhelmed, we agreed it was a stupid idea and never did it again. Story 12. I lived next to a pizza place that my friend was a driver at. At the end of his shift, he would swing by my place, pick me up, and we would smoke while doing his last drive for the night. So one night, I'm riding shotgun as usual, and we get to the last house. It plays as expected. I sit in the car and finish up the deed while he goes to the door and makes his deal. Then I noticed him wave me up to the door. I emerged from the comfort of the car, red-eyed and happy to find out that the old woman he was delivering to invited us inside to eat said pizza with her and her friends. To this day, we have told everyone that the women that we shared the pizza with were in their 20s. Story 13. All my special instructions have been pretty boring, like dance for us at the door and stupid stuff like that. But this one time, I'm delivered to an apartment and this dark-skinned fellow comes out and hands me a 50. Working at Domino's, you are only supposed to carry $20 change with you in case you get robbed, which I was, so I didn't have change for him as his total was only $16. He looks around in his pocket and only has $12. I sit and think to myself for a while, but eventually I'm just like, screw it, and say he can have it and I'll spot him the $4. Then he asks me if I smoke, a little thrown off because I wasn't expecting it, but I say, yeah. He motions me inside and runs to this back room, then hands me like a gram of and thanks me for being cool. Man, that job was awesome. Story 14. When my dad was working for the police department some 20 years ago now, I guess, cell phones were just coming out. And the department bought a whole slew of those old gargantuan schmucks when the Pope came to town. After that, they just had them for daily use. One time, my dad was in fugitive and was staking out this house on one side, while the FBI had a car on the other side. If you don't know, there is always a friendly, sometimes not so friendly rivalry between local police and the FBI. Anyway, my dad and his partner were told by the FBI to wear a disguise while they did this. These schmucks roll up with Groucho Marx glasses on when the FBI guy is dressed up head to toe. About 6 hours into the stakeout, they were starving and used their massive phone to call a pizza place to deliver to a car. This was in the early 90s and the driver didn't even know what a cell phone was. They hesitantly agreed and the dude showed up and apparently was scared out of his mind. Then he walks up and sees a car with 2 cops with Groucho Marx glasses on and loses his crap. Another hour or so passes and the FBI fellow walks over to my dad's car and is complaining about how he wanted all of this to be over because he was starving. My dad just said, "Want some pizza?" And the dude flipped out on them for being unprofessional, what with the pizza and glasses. The agent had been on the force for 4 months and my dad had been a cop for 15 years at that point. It brought him no greater joy than to see the FBI with their panties in a bundle. Story 15. Well, I was working evenings one night for a Domino's in NYC when I got sent out to an address written as 122 and an 8. So I go out to the place and there's nothing there but a sewer gate. I start looking around and ask out loud, "Where the heck is 122 and an 8? And I hear a voice from the sewer say, "You're standing on it, dude, just slip it down here." I'm kind of startled, but I see some cash come up through the grate, so I figure whatever and slide the pizza box vertically through a space in the bars. I started to walk away and noticed it was only $10. I yell back to the sewer, "Hey, this is a 10, the tab's 13. Sewer guy was like, "You're 2 minutes late, dude." So I tried telling him that I couldn't find the place, and he told me, "Wise man say, forgiveness is divine, but never pay full price for late pizza." All I could do was walk away at that point. Up until then, I thought I delivered everywhere. Story 16. I have a good story. So a woman comes into the store with a pizza on the brink of tears. She says frantically, "I came home and there was a pizza on the front step. I wasn't quite sure why. I took it inside and was so hungry, so I started eating some of it. I was on my second slice when I realized the pepperoni spelled out prom. My daughter is coming home in 15 minutes. Is there anything you can do to help me?" We patched the pizza up, rewrote prom, and sent her on her way. All right, so that's got to be like the sweetest pizza ever. Story 17. My girlfriend was a pizza delivery driver in New Jersey. If she was really late, I used to sit in the car with her. We're legendarily codependent, seriously, and chat, smoke, listen to music, basically what we do at home. The manager had no problem with it, and I used to finish up riding before I went out with her, so it was no trouble. Anyway, once she got a request that read, "Send cute blonde lesbian, tell her not to bring her boyfriend." Anyway, we assumed it was just nobody, so I went to the door myself with the pizza. It was a 15-year-old boy who looked utterly terrified of me when he opened the door. Story 18. The weirdest instructions I would ever get would be requesting me as a driver. "Please send blonde chick driver." I was the delivery driver for a well-known Canadian pizza restaurant that started doing delivery. There are two fairly big unis in my town, so I would always get orders to student ghettos throughout the city. As a end of high school uni-age girl, people used to be so thrown off when I would show up in a Mini Cooper with their pizzas. Tips were great though. Story 19. Instructions to the driver. I've had a few of these. Send tours bad syntax. Apparently, this was to a bush party and people needed substances. Naturally, I sold trees for some extra cash. Well, I was expected to show up when it got slow. Never did, so they ordered a pizza. Stroke of genius. Go to a conservation area, second pond on the right, honk horn. This was during Victoria Day weekend, so it was packed at a campground. This one is great. So my bosses knew I was a burnt-out college kid. I knew the boss's daughters. We were all in the same extended social circle. It was a cool time. When my boss hands me two Panzerotti boxes and says, Mike and Nick say to go to the shed, she knew I wouldn't be back for an hour. LOL. Came in to cash out, just pie-eyed. Tell him sorry, we'll make it worth his while. Not exactly instructions, but what the heck, the order was 15 to 20 minutes away to a hall function in a smaller little town. There were 5 pizza parties going there. The best part was I had a big Volvo wagon, and I just slid all the pizzas in the back. I got a $20 tip. Delivered to Hockey Arena, Rink 1, Blue Mezzanine, far end, have change for 50. Gotta love hockey towns. Story 20. I'm not a pizza delivery driver, but I once asked a girl at a pizza place to do me a weird favor. She seemed really confused at first. Story. I was intoxicated in town, of course without a car, and wanted to get to my friend's place who were also all intoxicated. A taxi was really expensive, but I remember that my friends wanted to order pizza, so my intoxicated brain thought it would be a great idea to go to the pizza store and order a delivery to my friend's house, and then ask if I could go with the driver. Relevant to r/frugal? Story 21. My dad ordered a pizza one time and was informed that they would not deliver to our house anymore. He actually knew the guy on the phone from a previous job they worked at together. The conversation went like this. Pizza guy, PG, sorry, Steve, we can't deliver to your house anymore. Dad, what the heck? Why not? PG, apparently every time our drivers come out there, they get their cars egged. The process of being pelted with eggs, in case you didn't know. My best buddy, we were 12 years old, was actually there staying the night that evening. He and I were the very culprits who had been doing this. My dad comes down to the basement where we always hung out and gives us both an earful because obviously he knew that we had been the little crapheads who had been egging the pizza men for an untold number of months, maybe a year before that. We didn't know we had been banned, lol. So my dad calls up his buddy at the pizza place again, on a mission, and proceeds to tell him that he has threatened everyone in the house with their lives and that it is now safe to remove our names from the no pizza delivery list. His pal obliged and all was well, but I really do think that my dad wanted to end us. And if you're learning a thing or two from these videos so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 22. The first thing you have to understand about my story is that I live in a rural Amish community. That being said, I once had an Amish man order a pizza for delivery. I asked for the address, which he gave to me, and I told him when the pizza would arrive. As I was about to hang up the phone, he told me that that isn't the address he wants the pizza delivered to. The house he wanted it delivered to was a couple of miles away on some tiny back road. He was ordering the pizza from his neighbor's house because they had a phone and just assumed that I was asking for that address. I will tell you one thing, there is nothing more frustrating or entertaining than taking an order from anyone who is Amish. Story 23. Pretty mild compared to some, but one night I got a delivery ticket with the following instructions. Stay on the main road, lock doors, keep both hands on the wheel at all times, do not stop, do not exit your vehicle, do not make any erratic movements. Had a huge delivery to the state penitentiary and had to drive through the grounds yard to get to the delivery area versus going through the main entrance. 5 guards met me and removed the pizza from the car. I wasn't allowed to get out. They also, or the state I suppose, tipped me $100. Story 24. Kind of off topic but related. I was really spiked one day and ordered some frickin' bacon, pineapple, pepperoni pizza for myself, but I wanted to try doing it online. When I filled out the form, for some reason, I got confused and put in the special instructions, it's a house. The delivery woman got to my door, gave me my pizza, and asked, what were the special instructions, it's a house? I just stood there, eyes glassy, and said yes. I proceeded then to give her the money and close the door. I am not a clever man. Story 25. I worked at a big pizza place in high school. I saw it and heard it all. One time I discovered my girlfriend was cheating on me, and it broke my little 16-year-old heart in two. The guy was some 19-year-old cool guy with a fast car and crap. That wouldn't matter except for the fact that he actually started taunting me, like found out my number, and would call me intoxicated and say he was about to sleep with my now ex-GF and weird/mean crap like that. I would get all mad naturally, but then be a big ball of tears when he'd hang up on me. Poor little past me. So, no crap, about 2 weeks after I found out and she and I broke up, this guy who didn't know I worked at the pizza place called up and the heavens aligned, and I was actually the one that answered the phone. I happened to know where he lived, so when I put in his number and saw the address, I asked what the name was, and it, sure enough, was goddamn Kyle. Screw Kyle. So anyway, I kept my cool, took the order, turned around in disbelief, and told all my buddies on the make line what just happened. Oh, sweet revenge. They had all been there listening to me moping around the previous few weeks, and of course had my back and felt bad for me. All of them started high-fiving with joy and essentially said, "Oh, we got this, dude, don't you worry about it." The things that happened to that pizza both before and after being cooked were unworldly. Never heard from him, so I guess he enjoyed every bite. Hopefully the ex-girlfriend was there with him splitting the pie. Story 26. I used to make pizza in downtown Minneapolis. One day, 2 delivery drivers called in sick, so we had another driver and the store manager do the deliveries. I was one of 2 cooks there, and we had finally gotten past the noon rush, so I wasn't exactly necessary. I got a call from my manager asking me if I could do some deliveries on foot because I lacked a car. I obliged and went on my way. I had to go into this really upper-class apartment complex with fancy, schmancy everything. Took the elevator up to the 3rd floor to find an envelope taped to the door with the payment and tip as well as some typed instructions. I was told to leave the pizza at the front of the door, knock twice, and then leave. When I arrived at the pizza place again, I learned that the particular customer always leaves some rather interesting instructions. Story 27. I used to deliver sandwiches and noticed that one older woman in particular would always ask for a specific guy to deliver her food and was cool with waiting till he was back if he was already on a run. We had our suspicions as he always took longer on these deliveries, but we're used to customers in weird situations, so we stayed out of it. We later found a love letter she wrote to him spelling out how she was basically using him as a street worker. Weirdest ambivalence ever. On the one hand, go get him, tiger. It's not hurting anybody to help an older, lonely woman. On the other hand, what the heck? You're getting paid extra to have fun with this older woman while we're still at the shop picking up your extra work. It was a really laid-back environment. Story 28. This guy told me to deliver it to the back door, which was fine, nothing too unusual. Usually it bugs me to go searching for the back door, but it was around Christmas time and there are always good tips. Plus, I kind of knocked over his statue with my car, lol. So I went around to the back of the house and knocked on the back door. The guy asks who it is, and when I tell him it's the pizza, he just tells me to leave it on the floor and get the hell out. I've heard customers swear before, but this guy seemed rude as heck. But I just laughed and went along with it, but had to ask how he was going to give me the money, obviously. He asked how much he owed me after being surprised that he had to pay, weirdly enough. I told him the amount and he popped it out of the mail slot, called me a filthy animal and to keep the change, which was only a couple of cents. Suddenly, things turned bad fast. He starts telling me I have 10 seconds to get off of his property or he'd handle it himself. I figure he's just being a schmuck, so I start to leave. All of a sudden, there are loud bangs coming from the house. Needless to say, I bolt out of there to my car, his maniac laugh following me all the way back. Seriously, the most messed up thing I've seen as a delivery guy. The weirdest thing is that on the phone, I swear, it sounded like a 10-year-old kid who ordered it. Alright, so at what point of listening to this specific story did you realize, crap, it's Macaulay Culkin? Story 29. My fiancé and I had his brother and his brother's girlfriend over for a night of getting intoxicated and playing some N64. I got my fiancé a Batman pajama onesie for Christmas, which he spent the entire night in. I wore all black and cat ears while we put a paper bag with holes in it over his brother's head and made him straw cuffs. His brother's girlfriend wore my penguin pajama onesie and drew on an eyeliner monocle. We ordered pizza and asked for the Batman insignia to be drawn on the box. My fiancé answered the door in his Batman onesie and used his version of the Batman voice the entire time the delivery driver was at our apartment. Story 30. Not a driver, but it's relevant, I promise. One time, I was walking back to my room at my university, and I saw this pizza driver driving around. I saw him go around and around a couple of times till he pulled up next to me and said, "Can you help?" in some foreign accent. "Sure," I said. "Can you tell me where is?" He replied. I couldn't tell what he said. "What was that?" I said. "Can you tell me where is?" He replied again. "I didn't hear that last part, sorry." He replied as he stuck out a piece of paper so I could read. I looked at it and it said, "The dorm." That poor guy probably thought the dorm was some mythical creature he had to hunt down. Story 31. Fun story. I was visiting a friend and we walked over to his girlfriend's house. She lived with 4 other girls and one of them was walking around without anything. We asked her about it and she said, "My boyfriend broke up with me and I'm all out of craps to give." She was pretty hammered too. She walked around like that for 3 hours. Anyway, they ordered pizza. When the pizza guy showed up, she talked him into making out with her and grabbing her. She was really cute too. I was sad she didn't ask me, but at least you guys get an interesting story and will know that good things can really happen in this world. Story 32. Some intoxicated dude called right as we were closing. Told me to call when I got to his house and wait for a couple of minutes. Not super strange by any means, but this was when I was relatively new to the job. Let's just say my imagination took a hard left into some very nasty places, and of course, I couldn't call my shop because by the time I got to his house, a pretty nice house too, we'd have closed. Anyway, I call up these dudes, and in the distance, I hear a bunch of quads start up and start driving towards me. They get nearer and nearer, and then they end up driving away. About 2 minutes later, they came back and meet me at the front of the house and want me to get on the quad so they can show me where to deliver next time. Against my better instincts, I get on the quads and they drive me out into the desert to this abandoned shack-like thing. I very much thought I was going to get essayed. Turns out they were real bros. One of these guys was some sort of professional dirt bike rider, and he gave me some grass. And then there was a nurse who was working at the local prison who gave me a beer, and I ended up talking to him about the medical field. I had been training to become an EMT at around this time. Then there was an older dude whose son I had gone to school with. Apparently, the son's now got a license to grow grass in California. It was pretty awesome. Story 33. I was told very vague directions to a house that was supposedly 15 minutes away. I called the woman and she just whispered into the phone saying, "It's by the signs." I didn't know what the heck she meant and asked for the street, which I couldn't find because I wouldn't go on the GPS. She then said she didn't know, so after 20 minutes, I somehow got to her house late at night, which ended up not even being in the town where the pizza place was. She then whispers more to leave the food on the ground and slips the money under the door. Weirdest crap I have seen. Thought I was going to a dangerous house. Story 34. My ex-boyfriend got a part-time job delivering pizza. He came over one day after work and told me the story. It was a Friday night and he was making a delivery. He rang the doorbell and a group of young girls answered the door. They kept asking him about his tattoos, to which he replied with, "I can't show you them while I'm on my shift." Then he said, "Your total is $25.69. And one of them rebutted with a heh 69. Then he said, "As funny as that may be, I'm required not to laugh." He left to the girls shutting the door and one of them screamed, "He was so hot." Story 35. I had a friend in middle school who used to mess with Domino's drivers so hard that they got blacklisted. Is that even possible? And they wouldn't deliver there anymore. Thing is, they lived in a super nice neighborhood, so it wasn't sketchy or anything, and they always left a hefty tip. Shenanigans include leaving a note saying that the money is in the shoe. There were about 50 to 60 shoes scattered all over the yard. They also set up an obstacle course and made the driver complete the challenge before paying. I remember setting up a guitar and a set of drums in his yard, and we started playing Eye of the Tiger as loud and as epically as possible when he pulled up. Story 36. It wasn't because of weird instructions, but I delivered to a hotel when I was in high school. I knocked, and the door, unnoticeably ajar, fell further open, showing me a person lying in the bed. I knocked again. No reply, no movement. Hello? Hello? Nothing. I banged on the wall so it would be louder. Maybe they were just in a deep sleep. A man's face appeared from the sheets, eyes wide open. He didn't look directly at me, but I could tell it was for my attention. He then looked at the table in the kitchenette on the other side of the bed. There was money on it. I looked at him, his face covered once more. He definitively could have had a rifle under those sheets, but I was young and dumb. I sprinted. I basically threw the pizza and grabbed the 20 in one motion. Less than 3 seconds, I was out the door. I decided from then on to only make transactions with people who would be decent enough for common courtesy and to carry mace. Story 37. I wasn't the driver, but I took the order while working at a 24/7 pizza place. A bunch of intoxicated frat boys called and said they wanted the fattiest, most disgusting pizza we could summon up. They then said they wanted it delivered by the fattest person we had on the clock. We stacked 2 pizzas, meat lover and pepperoni powerhouse with extra cheese on top of one another, and ran it through twice, having to press it down because it was too big to pass through the conveyor oven, and soak the crust, sides and bottom in garlic sauce, essentially butter-flavored soy oil and garlic. We then sent out our skinniest female delivery driver wearing one of those fat sumo guy costumes. Dudes tipped the girl pretty well, called back and said they took one bite and had to stop, which they assured us meant mission accomplished, and thanked us for playing along. Story 38. Haven't delivered in years, but leave it on the porch and pick up the envelope. Don't ring or knock, just leave. Not from the customer, but from my boss. Never asked why. They were regulars and always included a decent tip. Wait at the end of the drive. Guy lived at the end of a really long, really bad driveway and drove his pickup down to the road to make the connection. Nice guy, but apparently had a really horrible driveway. Only accept cash. Dude had bounced lots of cards and checks on us. Bonus was high-placed Ivy League administrator and a real schmuck. The orders were always huge, and sometimes he, quote-unquote, forgot to tip. He had a creepy two-dimensional dog we were told not to touch. The frickin' dog would stand and stare at us the whole time. Once we couldn't get in the damn building and couldn't reach him for half an hour. Street numbers that are out of order. One street had one at the opposite end of where it should have been. I was pretty mad about that one. How is this even allowed? Best one I remember off the top of my head, the building was an upscale quad with a 2-story glass-walled stairwell at the corner with a wide spiral stair. As a woman came down the stairs, I thought, she looks like a dancer. She paid me in folded singles like $30 or more. Anchovies stink, and if you open the box in the car, you can't get the smell out for the rest of the night. The few people who ordered those, we memorized their addresses so we wouldn't have to look. Story 39. We order from the same pizza place every few weeks and always get the same driver. He's a great guy, always happy, always pleased to bring us our pizza. We are his customers, and he tells the other drivers that. So, being such a nice guy, we decided to start having some fun with the instructions. Draw a dinosaur in the box. We got a raptor-like Sharpie sketch. Write a joke on the box. I don't remember the joke, and we didn't get the joke when he told it to us. He only wrote the punchline on the box and told us to rest. It was part interactive, so we faked laughter and gave him credit for the effort. We always tip this guy well, so he's always happy to oblige in our silly little ideas. I'm open to ideas if anyone has them. Story 40. I was sent to this house with an order of a steak hibachi and a couple of sushi rolls that added up to something like $19.60. I like to call before I get to a place just to give people a bit of a heads up. So by the time I got to the door, it was already open. In the doorway stood a chubby kid, about 9 or 10 years old, that reminded me a lot of the kid from Bad Santa, but without the curly hair. I tell him the total as I pass off his food. He hands me a $20 bill, and with a straight face, he smugly says, "Keep the change, pal." Immediately after, he closed the door, and I stood there for a second, trying to process what just happened. When I get back to my car, I noticed the time and realized it was way too early for that kid to be home from school. I couldn't help but laugh at the whole situation. No wonder he sounded a bit cocky when he told me that I could keep the 40 cents and change. This kid probably faked being sick so he could stay from school and was probably in there watching TV or playing video games while eating sushi and feeling like a big shot. I know I would have at that age. Story 41. I used to work for Pizza Hut, and the most memorable request was on an internet order that said, "Send your highest achiever." Me being the only driver, since it was during the day, I took the order not knowing what it meant. When they answered the door, the dude asked, "Are you a high achiever?" I was like, "What do you mean?" Then it clicked. What do you ask? He says, "Here's the cash for the pizza, and from now on, when we order, you don't even have to knock, just walk in, set the pizza on the coffee table, take your cash, and hit the stuff until it's cashed." They quickly became my favorite customers. They had some amazing grass. It got to the point where my manager would see me walk in and look at my eyes and be like, "It was that house again, wasn't it?" I miss delivering pizzas. Story 42. One of our semi-regulars called to place an order of eggplant parmesan right before closing. My boss, being spiked and bored, decided to make this meal look frickin' fabulous while I was cleaning in the back. Took the delivery to the dude and came back, no big deal, except I see my boss on the phone crying. Apparently the dude had ordered this as his possible last meal before going in for bone marrow transplant surgery the next morning. He had called to thank us for receiving a meal that looked just like the way his grandmother used to make it. Story 43. Had an intoxicated lady try and put the change in my pocket herself in front of her family. Went to a house that had a prank call for 3 extra large pizzas. 3 other drivers from other restaurants showed up. The owner was confused as they hadn't ordered food. Took them back to the store, took a call from a lady throwing a kid's birthday party at a nearby swimming pool and sold her the 3 pizzas at a hefty discount. Took 3 calls from a guy looking for a girl who had clearly given him our number instead of hers the night before. Gave him a discount heartbreaker deal I came up with on the spot. Got into a competition with one of my managers to who could answer the phone with the most ridiculous name and not have the customer noticed. I used Pocahontas, but I lost to Rainbow Butt Sprinkles. Had my colleague steal my rental car since mine was being repaired due to a part of a building falling on it. I wasn't in it. And go off-roading, getting a Hyundai Accent stuck in the mud, and then 2 pickups trying to pull it out also got stuck. Had the entire exhaust system from the head pipe to the muffler fall off my beater car. Took multiple school lunch deliveries to elementary schools, sometimes in other towns that don't have a pizza place. Would haul a couple hundred personal pizzas in, never got tipped once. And the volunteers would just stare at me like I should have moved it all from my car into the gym in one trip and serve it for them. Was getting gas and had a truck at the station back onto the hood of my car just after I got it back from the previous building-related repairs. Once I had my car spin 180 on the freeway on a day that it snowed, Luckily, traffic was only going about 10 kilometers per hour. Story 44. I'm so glad I can post this. Has to be the weirdest delivery in the world. So before I even get to the delivery, my manager tells me something is weird about it because the guy wanted to call me, the driver, before I delivered it. He told him no, so I was told to call the guy when I got to the house. I arrive at the house and call the number and he tells me to come to the door and ring the bell. Okay, fine. An elderly woman answers the door and he tells me to hand the phone to her, so I do. She starts yelling and screaming at the guy on the phone, telling him she has a restraining order and she changed her phone number and everything. She's really upset and crying. She hangs up and tells me how he lives in another state and he's insane. I guess this was the only way he could think of getting to talk to her. Weirdest crap I've seen. Yeah, I never got a tip on that delivery either. And if any of these stories got to you, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.